Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this very interactive webinar today. We have a lot of things planned for you. It's going to be fun. It's going to be personal. We hope you'll enjoy it. And more than that, we hope you will learn something new today. And today, as the title suggests, we are going to be talking about WFP's digital transformation journey, since it was declared a priority by the Executive Director of the World Food Programme 5 years ago. And if you've joined a UN webinar in the past months, chances are that you've seen this next slide, because digital transformation is not just a priority for WFP, but also for Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the entire UN system, and is therefore a priority for the UN as a whole. And the Secretary General declared digital transformation to be part of his quintet of change. And the quintet is this set of core enablers that includes critical capabilities that the SG believes are going to transform the work of the UN and help us make progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals over the coming years. So it's really important that we as a UN system get up to speed with the quintet and the capabilities, and specifically here with digitalization, the opportunities that it presents, but also the challenges that it may present. And with that in mind, we're really grateful that colleagues from WFP could join us today to share their experience, a lot of experience over the past 5 years in this space. So thanks in advance for that. Before I introduce you to our first speaker, I wanted to share a quick word about how this session is going to run today. It's a little bit different to regular UN sessions. For those of you who join more regular, you will know that we always try and leave a lot of room for Q&A. And discussion and interaction. But today we're going the extra mile, and after a short presentation and an overview of WFP's digital transformation journey, we're going to take you into breakout groups and give you the chance to learn a little bit more about one specific topic that you're interested in. Before we do that, I just want to say that the most popular question in all of our webinars tends to be whether a webinar is recorded. I'm happy to tell you that it will be recorded, and we'll share it in our webinar library after this webinar. And that will also be a chance for you to catch up with the other sessions that you could not join as part of the breakout. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker for the day, Pierre Villasinski. PG, Pierre is the Deputy Director for Digital Transformation Services at WFP. Prior to that, Pierre served as Deputy CIO for WFP, and he also worked at the World Bank. Pierre, thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you with us. You're one of, I think, 4 colleagues who we're going to see today. I'm really glad that you could join us. Handing over to you, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Johanna. Colleagues, good morning, good afternoon. A pleasure to be with you here today. I'm going to take you through a few high-level slides about the World Food Programme. I'll skip me. What we've been doing, we've been on a journey, for about 5 years now, to really look at how do we bring digital transformation to the World Food Programme in a meaningful way that is tied to business objective. What you see on this slide here is a bit of a mishmash of what are the driving factors that are pushing us to look at digital transformation in a very serious way. So the first one is that, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with the World Food Programme, a large humanitarian agency. We do a lot of emergency work, and very sadly, business is booming. We have more challenges on our hand, rising hunger, more conflict, more climate change, more disaster on our hand, and we need to really stretch every dollar using technology and data to really make sure that the people we serve are served effectively with the right assistance, and can get back on their feet. The second point is really about the winds of change. The humanitarian sector, the development sector, I would say, are about 5 to 10 years behind every other industry, and every other industry has been disrupted by digital. Commerce, trade, finance, banking, entertainment, media. I think we've all seen this, so I'm not going to state the obvious. The third point is the third and the fifth point are really related. WFP is an organization that is very entrepreneurial. We have an emergency DNA. We have a workforce that is committed to getting the job done no matter what happens. And so it's a very good catalyst for us to build on. Our executive director saw the need for us to really harness technology and put digital as a key priority. It's one of our 5 corporate priorities. And And finally, I think there's been an acknowledgement that we're not going to get it right from the first go. This is really something that requires continuous improvement, that requires us to go boldly into areas where not everything is clear, but go in there and see what we learn and reflect and iterate. And so really, I want to talk to you a little bit about, we talk about digital transformation. What does that mean exactly? And we've had many conversations in the team on, is there a good definition of digital transformation? The first thing to me, and this sounds a bit counterintuitive for somebody who's been in technology for some years, is that digital transformation is not about just technology. It really is about how you bring technology into all the areas of business, the back end, the front end, from HR to procurement to nutrition to supply chain. There is no area of any organization that is spared by digital, and really bring it in with the appetite of fundamentally changing and evolving your value stream. How do you deliver value to customers and stakeholders? So really early on, we took it in a way that is really two different work streams that are complementary and that are driving a lot of our efforts at WFP. The first one is we need to start from what WFP does today. And what I mentioned is we're a large humanitarian agency. We have a lot of activities about cash transfer, about food distribution, about nutrition, about supply chain, about partner management. And so how do we start? This is really our starting point, in the hopes that if we bring this into the digital world, one, it'll give us better relationship with our networks of stakeholders, it'll give us better data, and that will show us the way on how do we need to evolve our operating model to seize new opportunities. So I think it's a little bit abstract, and I'm not going to be super granular, but I'm going to still a bit abstract. What you see here is a typical WFP operation, right? Take any of our large operation, South Sudan, Yemen, Ethiopia, you name it. Here you have a bit of a graphical representation of the networks and the ecosystems we're part of, right? So obviously we have a lot of relationship with beneficiaries and communities. We have a lot of relationship with financial service provider when we distribute $2 billion of cash on a yearly basis. We have relationship with cooperative, relationship with humanitarian partner, relationship with cooperating partner, relationship with donors and government. And all of that is at scale across 80 countries. And it's a very fertile ground for digital. So how do we bring all of these relationships? How do we bring all of these data points in a way that is really helping us do what we already do, but better, thanks to digital? And so I'll give you the example, beneficiaries, right? If you're a beneficiary, let's say HCR and the World Food Program are working together in a refugee camp. Well, the value chain that we use to serve those people will require financial service provider, might require interventions in school, might require a network of retailer, might require a lot more information about beneficiaries to serve them better. And the more we digitize this in a coherent way with simplified processes, good data capture, the better we're able to be delivering results on the ground, maximize our impact, and monitor our performance. The second thing, and you'll hear about this today, we have Alessandra will talk about the hub. What is the value proposition that the World Food Program has vis-a-vis other humanitarian organizations? Some of you may know WFP is the lead of the logistics cluster, the lead of the emergency telecommunications cluster, the food security cluster. We have over the years developed a robust catalog of services that other agencies are using to facilitate their own operations. And so, again, if you think about all of the data that this generates, who is flying where can we store, PPE during COVID or non-food items, etc. How do we architect a service delivery model that allows us to serve other organizations and really partner with them, and at the same time give us the right data to make the right decisions as an industry? And all of this comes together with the value proposition to government, right? The more we become digital at the operational level, the more data we have, and the more we're able to package that data and that expertise and work with government so that they make the right decisions from a policy perspective. So this is really at the highest level, the simplest view I can give you of digital. Underneath all of this is really the tip of the iceberg. We have developed a lot of expertise on software development, a lot of expertise on strategy development, a lot of expertise on data. You'll have a preview of this with Diana today. A lot of expertise on innovation. Kyriakos will take you through a few of the lessons learned that the Innovation Accelerator has accrued over the years. And we need to push this, really this idea of we're not a silo, we're part of an ecosystem, and we need to make these relationships evident through digital. A lot of the work, I think that there'll be a link in the chat, a lot of that work, for those of you who might want to drill down a little bit, there's a lot of initiatives that are happening across the organization. They're all captured in a pretty compelling read called the Digital Foundations Report, which is really taking stock of everything that we've done over the past years and you know, shows the scar, what we've learned, the mistakes we've made, and all of this is available in at the URL you see on the screen and will be pasted in the chat. But I want to end with a very simple slide, and I think, you know, everybody will agree with this. And I think I opened by saying that digital is not just about technology, it's a lot more than this. And I think every day that goes by, my belief in what you see on the screen is reaffirmed by the fact that, you know, having the best technology on the planet alone is not going to cut it. And there's 5 key areas that I would welcome your views and your questions on. The first thing is that digital introduced a lot of new challenges: ethical use of technology, data responsibility, data protection, cybersecurity. All of these, which were traditionally seen as maybe something that was, you know, the purview of the IT division, are now stakes that we need to look at a much more senior and strategic level. Partnership is also an area that I think, you know, this group has discussed a number of times. We are on the receiving end of a lot of offers for partnership, which are either procurement disguised as our partnership or not a partnership at all. And so how do we really forge meaningful partnership in a way that help us advance our own interest, which are the beneficiaries' interest? We're seeing, and this is an example, this forum is an example of the growing appetite for maybe moving beyond just an agency transformation, but really how do we start looking at the UN and humanitarian sector, and how do we collaborate and cooperate effectively on forging new ways of working, identifying new value chains. And that's probably something that I expect over the next 2 years is going to be top of mind for many of us here in this room. And the last 2 at the bottom are absolutely fundamental. Culture change, you know, as much as I'd love to think that we're in a small startup that can move fast and break things and adopt new ways of working, we've all had our experiences, you know, resistance to change, not the way we do things around here. And so there's a lot of effort that my team is now pushing on change management, on upskilling, on bringing new blood in the organization. And that's absolutely fundamental to any kind of digital effort. And the last one should have been first, in my view. It is so easy to get lost in the tsunami of technologies that we have today, right? A bit of machine learning, a bit of AI, a bit of crypto, a bit of quantum, a bit of drones, a bit of all of this. And you can go down many different rabbit holes and without, you know, ever come out with any kind of meaningful results. So the one thing that we're pushing very hard now on the World Food Program and all the colleagues we work with is, let's not look at this from a technology perspective, but what are you trying to achieve? And then really put technology at the service of clear strategic objective, have products that have, you know, clear roadmap that are always tied to a particular business objective, not technology objective. So I'm going to stop here because I think you'll see this come to life in the conversation we're going to have with the 3 colleagues presenting today. I'm hoping to learn from you and maybe come back at some point with a more in-depth view of what we've been doing, because we've been at this for some time. We've made many mistakes. We're still learning a lot. And I'll stop here. I will give you back the floor. Oh my God, there's a lot of people. Hi. I wasn't seeing all of this, and happy to take a few questions. But again, I think the main show today is with Diana, Alessandra, and Kyriakos. So Joanna, back to you. I hope this was helpful.
Thanks, Pierre. Very helpful. And I'm sorry that the number of people scares you. It excites me how many people are interested in the topic. So colleagues, we have a couple of minutes for Q&A before we're going to go into those breakout sessions. So please feel free to leave them in the chat. And I'm taking the privilege as the moderator, Pierre. You touched on culture change as one of the most fundamental areas for driving a digital transformation. Culture change, of course, is very close to my heart. Everything we do in Union is kind of related to culture change. Can you share a little bit more about how WFP is approaching this topic? How are you trying to advance it? What is your team doing to support the organization there?
Yeah. This is a big question, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. So I think the two key principles that we have at heart that are related to culture change is about cross-functional execution. And what I mean by this is, if you look at all the giants today, all the digital giants today, they have a relentless focus on user experience, right? This is the only thing that drives their work is, are we adding value to our users? And it's very simple and everybody nods, and yes, it makes sense. But again, like all large public sector organization, our organizational model, our culture, our thinking, our processes are not necessarily geared towards that end user value, right? And having a number of conversations, some are easy, others are a bit more challenging, helping colleagues realize that they are not the users, that they are an important part of the process that adds value to the user, but they're not the whole process, and getting people to work together according to one integrated value stream is one of the things that we put a lot of efforts on, right? So measuring at the end of the day, are the beneficiaries more satisfied with the services that we deliver? Are the partners that we serve more happy with WFP? Not your unit or my unit, but really across functional execution. That's the first thing. The second thing on culture change that we had to take on a lot is that there's this, waterfall approach to delivering value, which is like, look, I'm gonna take 6 months and I'm gonna write all my requirements and I'm gonna do a lot of grand plans, and then we're gonna execute this. This is gone. It doesn't work like this. You need to be a lot faster and need to be a lot more iterative, right? And so having this ability to have a grand vision, but break it down in small chunk, deliver together, reassure that this is the right thing to do, and then continuously iterate are probably some of the two key challenges on culture. So I think showing, success stories around this, investing in fresh skills, investing in new perspective, investing in partnership with organizations that have done this better than you, and let them, show the way are some of the things we're doing. I think this is probably something that, time is on our side on this, right? We have younger and younger colleagues, and I don't want to be ageist here, but I think there's people with a digital native way of operating that are going to be a very positive influence in the system. But I think it's just, taking a bit of a leap of faith. And I think we've seen over and over again that if the results are here, people align. And so I'm, always optimistic, but we shouldn't go at this ignoring the critical change management effort that need to accompany any kind of digital efforts.
Absolutely, completely agree with you. Always optimistic and definitely not wanting to be ageist, but I think the younger generations entering the UN, they're going to have digital by default, tattooed on their arms. So very helpful there. I have a question from Amina that I want to take. So Amina is wondering, can you enlighten us on how we are sure that those data tech strategic objectives and plans across WFP are aligned, synchronized, and articulated? So I'm guessing, how many country offices do you have?
About 88. 88,
so
right.
A lot of country offices, a lot of different priorities and objectives. How do you make sure that the big overarching vision actually translates across all of those and across all the teams?
Right. So I would be lying if I told you that we have achieved this perfect alignment across HQ and operations and functions, etc. I think the approach we've taken is, how do we ground, over the past 2-3 years, and Diana can attest to this, we've been laser focused on solving real operational problems, right? So we're not looking at a piece of technology and say, oh, how do we deploy this? But we really spend a lot of time with our colleagues in the field, and not necessarily the managers, but the people doing the work, right? So we do spend some time with supply chain officers that have all kinds of issues about food quality incident, about measuring their stock, about tracking, transports as they're about to hit the warehouse, and we solve these problems. Once we solve these problems, there's a bit of a bottom-up approach that has given us a lot of traction in the organization, where if operations says like, yeah, this is making my life easier, I'm more intelligent, I make more, better data decision, that's a body of results that is worth something. Then you need to couple this with a more of a top-down approach, saying like, look, hey, we're seeing a lot of that stuff in the field. People are operating better, faster, etc. We now need to have a strategic framework that's going to bring more harmony into all of this. And that's where we are today. The World Food Program has its new strategic plan approved back in November, and we're going to go over the next 4 years to make sure that the strategic ambitions are well tied to an architecture, a data model, practices, and products that are all coherent. And that comes from the top, and we work at the same time with the country offices who have their country strategic plan. And my team is really connecting the dots across all of that and bringing up strategic misalignment, duplication of efforts in a very candid way to the senior management of WFP. We have a digital business and technology committee that is really attended by the most senior level of the organization. And we're, telling it like it is. We're saying like, look, there's misalignment here. And, it's a trade-off. We cannot do everything. And so there needs to be a strategic prioritization based on the ambitions of the organization. And the best that we can do is put that on the table as often as possible. And that's how we're getting there. I mean, there's a lot more we have a lot of roadmap and artifacts and architecture and product roadmap, et cetera, that are putting a lot of execution power behind this, but it's a combination of bottom up, testing what you're doing in the field, that it works, and then build on that at the top.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I wonder if we can take one more quick question, and then I promise to let you go. And we have lots of exciting presentations in the breakout groups. So I have Daniel here. He's now with UNICEF Innovation, but he used to work for WFP and in the program division. And he's saying there were sometimes issues of alignment on executing programmatic objectives between different technology platforms. So how do you account for programs' viewpoint in executing operations? Is there a little bit of tension between the IT space or between the innovation and digital space and program, or are they actually all aligned?
So I'm not seeing. Is it in the chat? Because I just want to make sure I get the questions right.
I got it as a private one. Let me forward it to you.
Okay, if you can just to make sure I get this right, because I was reading another question on open source, which is super important to us. Just briefly on this, we're doing a lot of work on open source. The next frontier is how do we start opening that up? It's on our roadmap, but right now we're so flat out on executing for operations that we haven't had the time to properly have this conversation. So I used to work with people in data management, cash transfer. Right. Okay. So I think that's. I think it's a sign of an organization that matures if you start to have conversations that are no longer related by the technology platform. And we're not there yet. I think that's part of culture change, and I think, and maybe change management, is that practices that have been established, let's say, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, with a number of colleagues that manage, their own little system, develop a very strong emotional attachment to this, and the pitfall is that you have conversation around the technology. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do successfully, I would say, not a home run, but we're hoping to get there at some point, is to just elevate the conversation. The stakes of digital are not about whether you're using PHP or Rust or Python. It's really, are you improving the satisfaction of your beneficiaries? Are you reducing fraud? Do you have real-time visibility on security incident? Can you protect the staff? And it really is elevating the conversation away from the technology into what are we trying to achieve as an organization. That conversation is happening with all the divisions in WFP, different levels of maturity. But I'm hopeful that we're going to get there, because there's no other way.
Great. So once again, optimistic. I like it a lot.
I'm super optimistic by default all the time. Maybe to a fault, but
no such thing. No such thing for sure. Pierre, at this point, I'm going to say thank you so much for the introduction, for fielding these questions. I know we have a few more, but I know we also have exciting breakouts lined up, and I want to make sure that the colleagues have time for that. So we're going to post these questions on our Union team space, and you're welcome to answer them there. So I'll put Shelley, and I saw there was a question from UNOPS. We'll put them in there, and if you have thoughts on them, it'd be greatly appreciated if you could respond to them there.
And especially for Shelley, just briefly, Shelley, please redirect your question to Diana, who is far smarter than I am on this, and will probably share all the tips that we've gleaned along the way. But thanks very much for the opportunity. Good luck to the colleagues who are going to present, and thanks, Johanna, for bringing this together. I'll make sure to attend the next one and learn from the colleagues. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Pierre. Appreciate it. And there we go, Shelley, there was your cue to join the breakout with Diana that's coming up. Before that, Anush, could I please ask you to pull up the slides with the 3 breakout group presenters who I'd like to introduce you to now. So we're going to have Alessandra, she's the head of business development and digital transformation. Kyriakos, he's the head of frontier innovations at the accelerator. And Diana Klein, and she's the head of data and analytics in the tech division. And we're going to invite the 3 of them to come join us now for a quick 2-minute introduction of the breakout group, that discussion that they're going to be leading afterwards. And we then invite you to select one of these breakout group discussions. So we're going to hear 3 case studies of how WFP use digital, presented by these 3 colleagues. And after that, it'll be up to you to decide which one you'd like to learn more about. And with that, I think, Alessandra, you're up first. So I will invite you to come on video and tell us a little bit more about the first case study.
Yes, thank you, Joanna, and thank you, everybody. I think we want to maybe introduce our topic with a little video and then just a teaser of what we are going to discuss in the breakout session. Over to you.
Welcome to the United Nations Booking Hub, the innovative 24/7 field services platform, featuring guest houses, hotels, flights, drivers, and wellness services for 600,000 aid workers every year in remote locations to deliver last-mile aid in over 100 countries. You can find information, pictures, and prices for over 270 UN guest houses offering accommodation around the globe. More than 4,000 UN vehicles are also available to book in just one click for airport pickups, in-city travel, and out-of-town missions. You can also book UNHAS flights and emergency global aviation services, reviewing schedules and prices, or available medical services in more than 70 UN clinics. The website also provides you with information on UNDSS listed hotels in selected cities and useful tips for a safe trip. Bookings are confirmed by email with useful details. To make your use as easy as possible, the Hub is available also in French and even as a mobile app to make bookings on the go. You can review the status of your bookings, add your favorite services for bookings in a click, and review your personal profile. Help us improve our services by letting us know how your travel experience was. Download the UN Booking app or visit unbooking.org now to begin an easier journey out into the world.
So thank you, colleagues. I think this is probably the last that we will see on the Hub, because I think today interesting topic will be to share lessons learned, pitfalls to avoid, mistakes to avoid, and good things too. So the idea is that we are not going to go into the specific items of the Hub, but more or less discuss and just share a beautiful journey on partnership with other agencies and on sharing digital transformation together with colleagues across different operations and different agencies. So I invite you to the meeting and we will discuss again this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Alessandra. That's great. And that will be the breakout group on interagency services. Next up, we have Diana. Diana, welcome to come on video and tell us a little bit more about what the breakout group on data strategy is going to discuss.
Thank you very much. A warm welcome to all of our colleagues joining us today. I just wanted to maybe bring us back to the conversation that PG started when we were talking about solving operational problems with data and looking at a field focus. What came to mind was our response to the Lebanon Beirut port explosion in 2020. At that point, we had some of the pieces of our digital ecosystem in place. And we were very pleased to note that the part of the response was leveraging this data to really have an immediate impact in our emergency response. As a result of our digital ecosystem that we built under digital transformation, we were able to have local data analysts have access to data which could tell them example, where the transporter routes were still functioning and which ones would have the best routes to deliver assistance. And we were able to, almost immediately find 12,500 metric tons of wheat flour and divert it to where it was needed most, to Lebanon at that time. So this was really a affirmation for us in our data program, that we were building the right ecosystem, we were leveraging the right data, and we were able to share this data with the right people at the right time. And so if we go to the next slide, the 4 key foundations in digital for WFP were our digital strategy, the data analytics, automation, and the app ecosystem. And we really wanted today to focus on the data and analytics. So if we go to the next slide, data and analytics is one of the 4 key pillars under our transformation agenda. And as a result, we had to build a data program around this. If we go to the next slide, we have 6 key pillars that we focused on for our data program: architecture, governance, master data management, integration, solutions, and our training and literacy programs. So today, if you join us in the breakout room, we're going to have 1 session on integration, led by my colleague Maurizio Benedetti, who really talk about one of our core assets for sharing data, which is our integration patterns. So hopefully there'll be enough time for another topic that you can choose, but come join us and we can discuss more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diana. It sounds very exciting. I'm loving all the little pictures we're getting here. And last up, no pressure, Kyriakos, to tell us a little bit more about pathways for incubating new ideas.
Thank you, Johanna. I would like to welcome everyone today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kyriakos. I work at the Innovation Accelerator WFP, and today in the breakout, I'll be talking about different case studies of innovation, specifically digital innovation, given the topic of today, and share lessons learned, where we've stumbled, and share experiences of how we might go about this. Next slide, please. I want to emphasize something that PG said in his introduction, and here I am showing the global innovation and technology map for WFP to highlight the fact that digital transformation is a whole of organization approach. And we at the Innovation Accelerator source, support, and scale innovations as it relates to humanitarian response and food security. But at the end of the day, we are a support function to all our colleagues in the 80+ country offices as well as in HQ. But of course, innovation is happening worldwide every single day. So it's one point that I want to highlight, that it is about strategic partnerships. It is about finding the right strategic objectives. And most importantly, it is about solving operational challenges by working directly with all our colleagues in the field. Next slide, please. This is the innovation journey that we provide at the Innovation Accelerator, and this is what we'll talk about in the breakout room. Essentially, how do you go from an idea to piloting something in the field to hopefully then scaling it up to multiple countries? I should also note that we are providing support to multiple other partners, UN agencies, foundations, and so forth. So we always welcome sharing our knowledge, lessons learned, and where we've stumbled, where we've succeeded, so that others can build upon the work that we're doing here at the World Food Programme. Next slide, please. While I did showcase an archetype of what an innovation journey looks like, I do want to highlight that there's multiple ways to approach innovation and to look at developing digital tools and products that solve a specific problem or use case in the field. So in the breakout room, I will cover 4 different case studies that exemplify slightly different approaches about how one might go about looking at digital transformation and digital innovation, and share lessons learned from each of the 4 case studies to exemplify how we might approach this in a multitude of ways using a variety of partners and approaches. So that will be the 3rd breakout room of the day. Thanks, Johanna, back to you.
Thank you, Kyriakos. So everyone, we've advertised 3 exciting breakout groups to you, and now it's up to you to choose them.
It's really exciting, and we get lots of inputs by everybody. What's actually behind it? So, which was the journey? we started internally, and this is, I think, something important. I think PG was mentioning a concept which is very important. Have a very challenging vision, but start with very small steps. So what we did, we started for internal delivery of booking our guest houses. And when we started, we didn't know how many guest houses we had and not even where, because the business model was completely decentralized. So the first, I think, journey that we did was not only for digital transforming the way in which WP managed the guest houses, but also in trying to have this centralized benefit rolled out from HQ to all of our operations, which was it took quite a bit of time for us to do it. Then we had a very enlightened partner, UNCR, that said, okay, why can you actually open up the service for your guest houses also to ours, so that we join the same platform? And so another, I think, good lessons there is that if you have the right attitude, if you have the right partner, it always takes two to really make a great innovation. And so thanks to UNCR, we started opening up the service to the other agencies. And then after that, we had UNICEF, IOM, UNFPA, and WHO joining, particularly in the guest houses. At the same time, we were expanding the service portfolio. So the two dimensions of development go actually along the same lines. You roll out a service, and then within your organization, then roll it out to the other agencies. In the meantime, you keep enlarging your service portfolio to other services like passenger mobility, carpooling, clinics, medical services, staff counseling, flights, emergency COVID flights, FUNAS flights. And so the journey is, as I said before, it's parallel. And so since we had other services, other agencies joined, and some agencies have 3 or 4 of our services, others have none, or but maybe just some small pilots at the field level. So the governance also of our service is very, very flexible depending on the client's needs. I think that's also a very important aspect of a successful partnership. And then, of course, this year we embarked at the end of last year, and particularly this year, we want to devote a lot of our focus on data management and providing global data dashboards. We have already lots of data available at the field level, but the idea is that we have been asked by our partners to provide data at the global level, and this we are already working on and providing it. Now, which were some of the people to avoid? I think it's important. I was told that this should be like more of a sharing what's behind the scenes and what was difficult to achieve. Now, it seems a little bit high level, but how many people told us you will never succeed? So many people told us it's whatever. We had this vision of having one single booking hub for all of the UN field services in one single place. And people are saying, okay, that's unrealistic. You will never succeed. So I'm talking about people within WP also. So there is a lot of, your vision needs to be really strong for you to catalyze a little bit of, energy, a little bit of positivity, and also the ability to go and pilot some of your ideas. Another pitfall to avoid is that people will tell you need to have the holistic strategy in business development completely developed and approved before you move forward. Now, yes, that's reality let's say a good theory, but in reality, as PG in fact was also mentioning, you need to be ready to move forward where clients can benefit from what you're doing, and then start as little steps. So that everything, the big picture, doesn't have to be completely approved. And if you tell us 5 years ago, would you think that the hub would have so many, partnerships set up? We would say it's impossible, but we did, because then, there is a catalytic effect of something that works well that actually allows you to move forward, even if your initial business model wasn't 100% holistic. You need the right capacity, staffing in particular, to start a project. This is also something that I want to say. Sometimes to test an idea, to test convince internally the organization about the benefit of what you want to do, you can start very small. And so you don't need a great amount of budget, a great amount of people. You really need to have a good idea that's useful to your clients. And then when that works, you should be ready to calculate the benefits and the efficiency gains, if any, and that will actually make things move forward because you have demonstrated your, on real grounds, your idea. Externally, so not internally to WP, we got a lot of, well, our agency has its own way of working. One single process will never work. And that's true to a certain extent, because if you think about it, many of the things that we do in our different agents are actually the same. So they might have different, some different, let's say, protocols outside different rules. But overall, I would tell you that 90% of how we have structured, for example, the guest houses management, that is working for 270 guest houses from 7 UN agencies, and it works the same since 5 years. So that also is something that you should challenge, and challenge the fact that no, things can be done if they are done right from the very beginning, can be the same for everybody. The service is managed, the service that you're proposing is managed at the local level. And so if you talk to HQ colleagues, they will tell you we don't have control over it. Then, okay, then talk to the field colleagues, because they will probably have a say, and they will be the one in the right position to say if what you are proposing brings actually benefit to their operations. So go and find where the real client is for your services. And mutual recognition does not apply to us, not to the service, not to field agreements, or even better, I don't think we signed the mutual recognition statement. So that is, the mutual recognition should actually allow us to partner much, let's say, faster, because we recognize each other's duty of care in due diligence in running our operations. So that also needs to be challenged. The mutual recognition is one of the pillars of your reform, and that should allow all of us to work together for WP to accept another agency rules, and vice versa, for us to develop together and shape together one digital system for all. Okay, if I move to actually the next slide, lessons learned from the business side. Make it work internally first and test customer satisfactions only then go external. So this is important, 2 steps that we always make. We make it work for our operations. We run a customer satisfaction survey that allows customers, real users of the service, to tell you and assess the service. And only when you are really sure, you go external and try to actually explain your colleagues that maybe they have the same process they can use. People in the field are extremely collaborative, often more than colleagues in headquarters. I did put it here because it depends, of course, on the type of services they are proposing. But what I have found, and also my team has found, is that people are really keen on collaboration. People are really ready to share ideas, to contribute, to have they see a system, they give us a feedback, they see that in a month we implement what they asked. This really brings a lot of interest into our colleagues. COVID was not only a blocker, but also a booster for service adoption. So do not have necessarily, colleagues telling you COVID, we have COVID. Of course, it depends on the local conditions, but some of the services that we developed actually helped trace, control social distancing. And so the adoption of our services was really accelerated. Never underestimate the importance of good user experience. Actually, this should be number one. If the user experience, good user experience, should be the single value proposition of whatever service you're going to design or develop or offer. Because if your user experience is good, it's very likely that the service is easy to use and your customers will be obviously happy. Sometimes all you need is a simple app. I don't know how much time I had, but we had, for example, developed. So this was, I don't know if to call it a mistake, or maybe like we did not catch enough importance of a mobile app. So we had developed a site which was mobile adaptive, because we wanted to minimize maintenance of 2 different systems. And so we didn't want to have a site and app. But then when the Deputy General Secretary came to WP and saw the hub, and she asked, okay, where's the app? And we said, look, you know, there is a link, it's much better, you can access it with your phone. And she said, I really want to download the app. And so you start thinking, maybe really we have not, so we were too strong on our vision of technology without recognizing that in 2020 at that time, people just want to download an app. And so we just changed our strategy and downloaded and developed an app. Of course, you need to listen to your clients and forget your neat implementation plan. So another good story is that when you have this service to develop, so you say first they do the booking management, they do the occupancy, they do the maintenance, they do the pricing. For example, our focal points of 7 different agencies told us, no, we actually want the most important single thing is invoicing. You need to be ready to stop your development plan to actually insert and develop immediately what your customers are asking you to do, even if maybe it's not the standard way to go. And then systems are a commodity. Change management is the key. So how do we make this happen? How did we get 1,200 service points in the field to work? Because I have as many people looking out at clients and supporting the rollout of these services than in the digital side. It's much more complex to change manage you know, the culture, particularly in the field, across operations and across countries, than to actually digitalize something centrally. From the technology side, very quickly, so we'll leave some time to questions and answers. A complex digital transformation involving multi-stakeholders needs agility as a frame of mind. And I'm not talking about the agile approach, the technology agile approach. I'm talking about agile frame of mind. Be ready to have a plan, but be ready to change it every single day, depending on the request of your clients and depending on your trials and on your pilots. If something needs to be changed because your clients tell you that it would be better, you better just stop your plan and rework it and make sure that this agility, sometimes I've seen finds resistance internally, but this is really key to success, particularly when you have a very, very big project. Go to, as soon as possible, start directly if possible in the cloud. So because we started 5 years ago, we didn't have at the beginning our the UN Booking Hub platform was not running in cloud, so we had to migrate it with all the complexity of it because we were running already services. So we wanted to make it a seamless transition to our customers. So obviously in 2022, without even having to explain why, go and start in the cloud because you will get absolutely, and we found incredible benefits in terms of flexibility of the, let's say, updating the platform to our needs. Do not ever estimate the power of single sign-on because, of course, in our platform, your agencies can enter with their own, and therefore everybody can enter feeling that the platform is their own. Be ready to spend a significant amount of time in digitalizing field operations and colleagues. We don't give for example, we have to explain people how shared emails work. Balancing service innovation with platform technical strengthening is not easy because you will have to spend money on the maintenance of the platform, but you also want to have that money to improve the platform itself. Data security and privacy management, I could never stress enough the importance that you do that if you're working for the entire UN, and listen to your clients and forget your neat implementation plan. So I think that's about it. And I don't know if we have time. I think we have 3 minutes of time for questions and answers, if any. Over to anybody that wants to jump in and ask any questions. I didn't have the time to read if there are questions in this chat. Can anybody do that for me in case there are, I don't see any specific questions, but if there are any.
Alessandra, I think we do have one question. Oh, Anush, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, please, colleagues can turn on their video and have it more of a conversation. And yes, Jean-Martin mentioned there's one in the chat from Karim. I think it's to this group. What is the model for ongoing funding of the app operations? As in, how do you make participating agencies pay?
Yeah, the funding model, we have decided with our CFO that if we develop any service which is of use for WP operations, the development of the features is paid by WP. Because the strategy that, as I said, we first develop features mainly for our operations, and then when we are sure that they work well, we offer it also to other agencies. So the other agencies are charged only the change management support. As I was saying, that's the key part. And many operations, definitely in the field, but also at the KHQ level, do not have the capacity in terms of change management of skills and capabilities. So we provide a team of experts per service line that will take and change manage and pilot and accompany work together with the external clients for them to successfully roll out the service and give us feedback. So the business model is, again, all the innovations are on WP, and on the other agencies pay for the support cost. Now, when an agency wants to actually ask for something specific, they can reach out to us, and depending on the capacity of our plan, we try to adjust any specific requirements of any specific agency, but we always try to give priority to features that are going to be of benefit to all. Was there another question that I see appearing on the screen while I was talking?
There is another question, Alessandra. It's from Liuba, who's asking about, is there actual live data you get from agencies in the countries? For instance, guest house availability, so that user can know in advance the number of free rooms. Yeah, this is something that we discussed. So that's a very interesting question, because we, from Rome headquarters, we thought to do an instant booking, like booking.com. You see there are rooms and you get it immediately. Now, what happens is that colleagues in the field, guest house managers, do not want that to happen, because they want to control who's coming in. They want to see if there is an emergency coming in and maybe they need to take. So actually, we did not move to the instant booking because of the fact that colleagues actually in the field want to have that last word to say, yes, you have a room. But I think this will progress over time, and by the time that the system is mature enough and focal points are happy, and they will see, then I think we will move into instant booking, which, for example, we do for medical services. So it will be easy for us to do it. I think we need to leave the room in 30 seconds. So thank you, everybody. And if you have any questions, you can send them to the organizers. You can send it to me directly, and we will make sure that we reach out and answer for any questions. Davide, which is the Hub Digital Manager, just posted the email that you can use to reach out for any other question. Thank you.
Good to see you again. I hope you had good discussions in your breakout. I'd like to invite our 3 breakout group presenters to come back on video and maybe just in 1 minute or so share the most interesting outcome of your discussion. Kyriakos, you're the unfortunate one. You're the only one I see so far. Do you want to kick us off? What was the hot topic in the Taking Innovations or Pathways to Innovation group?
I think one of the key themes was, how do you go from an idea or pilot and then to the testing part using the existing framework that we all have to operate within as UN agencies. So whether that relates to procurement or scale up or arranging for MOUs or partnership agreements. So how do you actually take this all and make it into practice? And I was sharing that it is a labor of love. It takes a lot of perseverance, but you can definitely do it.
I was going to say, you hit on all the biggest pain points there. I'm sure you had some great advice to share from the Innovation Accelerators scaling program. So thanks for that. Alessandra, you came up next. What was discussed in your group? What was the main takeaway?
Well, I think the major takeaway is that technology is a commodity and change management is the key. And when we say that, we recognize the importance honestly, when we say systems are a commodity, everybody, given some time and some budget, good developers are everywhere out there today, can actually develop a system. Now, the tough thing is to have happy customers using a system. And therefore, the change management should be really the #1 focus in terms of user experience, in terms of customer satisfaction, in terms of continuous improvement, in terms of recognition of mistakes and trying to recover, and having skills for people to roll out and to support rollout of new digital services. That's, I think, the key to good partnerships to shape together one digital UN way. Over.
Thank you, Alessandra. That's a fantastic outcome of the discussion. I secretly wish I had joined your group and not sat here in plenary helping lost souls. So thanks for that. Diana, back to you. Data strategy. What were you guys discussing in your breakout group? What was your highlight?
Thanks. We discussed one of the pillars of our data program, which was integration. And we were discussing how we went from very little integration to more a governed approach to integration. But the key to success was simplification, and to make sure that it was communicated to our community, developing a community and communicated, but also that our approach wasn't top down, but it really was agile. And that's one of the key takeaways from our lessons learned, is that agile is key to making sure that we have change management, we have the buy-in from the end users, and that we can adopt whatever is proposed. So thank you very much.
Great lesson learned there. I think what I'm hearing from all of you is that it's often not so much about the technology. That is not the hard part, but it's, it's people, it's processes, it's culture, it's getting all of that right. And then digitalization can be very successful. So with that, I'm gonna say a big thank you to all of you. I'd also like to bring in Anush, who helped an incredible amount making this webinar happen. So thank you also to you, Anush. Thanks to our presenters for sharing, for doing the work at your organization at WFP in the first place, and for coming out here and sharing it with this broader community. Really, really appreciate it. To everyone who's still on the call, and I see still a lot of people, we're going to try share all the recordings from the sessions and all the slides. They will end up in your inbox. Just give us a little bit of time for processing. And if you have any outstanding questions, we'll take them on the UN team space and include a link to that in the mail that we're going to be sending you as well. So with that, a big thank you to all of you for joining us, to our presenters for sharing, and we hope to see you all very soon.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Great. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to share our experiences and answer any questions that you may have on our data and our work on data. And today we thought we might present our integration, some of our integration work. And I have my colleague here today, Maurizio Benedetti, who's going to present the integration patterns that we've developed and how this is helping us share our data across WFP. So without further ado, I'm just going to pass it over to Maurizio. Over to you, Maurizio.
Thank you, Diana. Good afternoon, good morning. I don't know where we are connecting from, and to everybody. My name is Maurizio Benedetti. I'm the lead of the WFP Digital Core. The Digital Core team in WFP has a primary objective to define strong integration patterns and to foster the adoption of modern architectural principles. So as I've started earlier on to say, I mean, the role of my team and the role of the digital core in the organization is to standardize the different patterns that define the way the different applications integrate between each other. We defined a series of patterns to cope different needs, from the data ingestion of data ingestion patterns that you can see right now, that systems can use to leverage on existing architecture infrastructural component to move data from the origin systems to the centralized platform in the organization. Our data platform is called DOTS. I don't know if you ever heard about it, but anyway, it's the place where all our data integration, triangulation, data transformations occur. So what we did is pretty much define a very limited number of patterns that fulfill different roles. The idea is to have to speak a language which is easy, understandable, and acceptable by the development community, because in the past we used to have a lot of adherence to typical service-oriented architectural patterns, but we were talking a language that pretty much put the different enterprise architects and the different architectural principles like if they were dictated from the ivory tower. And therefore, developers tended to ignore or consider them as a way too complicated for their needs. So our approach, we will see later on also in the next slides, is to keep the number of options pretty much to the bare minimum and eventually allow the definition of different flavors of the same pattern. So try to be very easy to be understood by developers. So in the example of the data ingestion patterns, we do support different data confidentiality, different data temperatures, different data types. But in the meanwhile, they are very well defined, easy to be understood, and ready to go. So the last point about being ready to go is, in my humble point of view, one of the key of the success of such patterns. They need to be easy, and then the way to do it, the way to use them must be easier than doing things in the wrong way. So the idea is to not impose them, but make them so easy that in the long run they become a dominant pattern. Because entering in the right methodology or using the right methodology, it's easier to do in some other different ways. In the past, we used to have a lot of problems in having systems connecting directly between each other, directly on the source database and so on, that cause a lot of tight coupling. That is one of the problems that we need to fight in modern architectures, especially also when there is a data exchange between systems. I think the primary objective here is to define patterns that allow loosely coupled architecture, but well integrated. So these are the two keywords that need to be combined. Diana, if you can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so to do this, I mean, we define the organization as an API-first organization. So whatever happens in terms of systems interoperability, data exchanges, interfaces between systems are mainly based on APIs. So the API-first principle, I mean, this is an example of one of our architectural principle that is being fostered in the organization. What does it say? It says that every system needs to design with an outside-in approach. What does it mean? That APIs are the first interface of any given system. No solutions are tolerated in the organization, in WP, that do not expose, do not think about how to place themselves into our ecosystem. APIs are a must, cannot be an afterthought. So in the past, we used to have an inside-out approach where, and we consider it as an anti-pattern, where a system eventually developed their own APIs. And adopting an inside-out approach is detrimental, is demonstrated to be detrimental for the quality, the flexibility, and the reusability of the implemented APIs. Right now, we are very much in a position where each and every system that we operate or we develop or we plug in our enterprise ecosystem have API first as the core principle. It's something that no shortcuts are allowed and no exceptions are tolerated. That in the long run paid a lot in our interoperability approach. If you can go to the next slide, Diana. That led pretty much to the other an additional family of patterns, which are the so-called API integration patterns that are simple, predictable, and limited in numbers. So what we identified is that by having these 5 different options, we were covering pretty much 99% of our needs. Then exceptions are possible, variation of the existing patterns are also possible and are discussed at our architectural design, architectural discussions, but pretty much this is it. I mean, we have different families. We have families that foster real-time access to the data, some others that fosters integrations of data from heterogeneous systems. In some other cases, it's mostly a mediation of APIs performed by our gateway and API approach, but different flavors for different needs. We need to recognize that a silver bullet does not exist here. In the same time, the number of options must be limited and clear, and they should be known if little overlapping between one of each other. They must be contextualized, easy to be predicted in terms of implementation time, behavior, and so on by the developers, so that developers can build their own trust on the patterns. It's a journey, and they will start. We also noticed by submitting these patterns to our development community, consider we have 350 developers at the moment around the globe, that pretty much the choice of a standard pattern is extremely easier than implementing any other form of coupling between systems. So at the end of the day, this kind of this family of patterns, I mean, we are just talking about 5 of them, created the space to implement thousands of API endpoints in the last couple of years. Nowadays, the systems talk over API interfaces by default. There's no other option which is tolerated or which is practical at the same degree as API. And pretty much API is the new black in the organization. But, and the last slide, Diana, I mean, also being conscious of time, we do have we have also defined an additional family of patterns, and you can see on the left, I mean, all the different patterns cover different needs of our enterprise architecture domain. But pretty much all these patterns, a family of these patterns is dedicated to data integration. The data integration, I may say, is one of the most complicated and most probably the most difficult to be understood by our developers. But it is a must to be defined, because all in all, there are different ways to integrate data in nowadays industry, and depending again on the volumes of the data, the confidentiality, the speed of the data, the temperature of the data you need to enable process, and so on, there are different options. The options are part of our solution portfolio. We know that if we need to go for a data virtualization, there is a pattern called the data room that sets clear and well predictable behavior in the journey. If data replication is a part of the option, you have some other variations. You can see a couple of them. And all in all, it all depends on what is the final goal. So different ways to support different temperatures, different confidentiality, and different characteristics of the data. I mean, also here, I mean, no silver bullet. I mean, but we can just predict with properly defined family of patterns to be applied case by case. There is a lot I can be talking about. I can keep talking about this for most probably 4 hours. But Diana, I mean, I don't know what is the space for questions. If
Sure. I think right now we'll just open the floor to questions on this particular topic. If you want, if there's any particular questions you want to ask, please go ahead in the chat. Or just unmute yourself and ask the question directly. Just to give you a bit of background, as part of our 6 pillars, integration was one of the key challenges that we had in WFP. And this is why we wanted to present to you the approach that we had. It took us, you know, it didn't happen overnight. It took us time to develop these patterns. And it really was working with all of the different teams in WFP so we could come to a consensus, and that these are actually endorsed and everybody knows about them as well. So this was just an example of some of the work that we had to do to build the foundation of data in WFP. So there's a question on was this elaborate piece by piece, or was it elaborated at a high level and then developed? So maybe Maurizio, you can answer this question from Roberto.
Roberto, I think this is one of the few cases where we have elaborated as soon as we moved on. I mean, I think one of the unique approach that we have taken 3 or 4 years ago, I mean, now we are almost 4 years back, when we started all of these journeys, was to start with the bare minimum to start. And reach by elaborating the need. We have been, I mean, I don't want to use this abused term, but we have been very agile in this. When we started, we didn't know everything for sure. And we didn't invest years in defining everything. So we started with a couple of patterns for API integration, which were the most evident, the easiest, and most probably the most naturally evolved patterns. And we evolved by listening our developers community. And one of the beauty of the current situation in WFP is that we have a very strong community with around 400 developers, which are constantly talking on 400 people, sorry, and 350 developers, which are constantly talking with our Slack channels. There is the most popular one called API First. So we listen to the needs, we try to prototype new patterns, and eventually we go to the architectural board to present additional patterns that enrich the family. Even if we need to, how you say, to evolve existing ones, it's also a very common practice. Nothing is written in stone. I see you also posted another question. So was there input from stakeholders, countries, suppliers? Depends. I mean, inputs from stakeholders, countries, and suppliers. I need to say that we adapted very much to what the industry says. I mean, I think it's one of those disciplines where it is inconvenient to improvise or invent, but we adhered to many of the standards of the industry. We have been very much following the open API specifications. I mean, the WFP is a strong adopter of the open API specifications, as all our developers follow this, and we have been also following the most common best practices on the industry about REST API, stateless relationship between systems, and what are the most common practices to implement loosely coupled architectures.
I'm going to start the recording. I'm going to share, as I mentioned in the introduction, 4 case studies, and then I will open it up to questions. Feel free to type in questions as I'm presenting, but I won't be able to see the chat as I'm sharing my screen, and then hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A, but then I'm also happy to follow up with anyone else after this session ends. So just a quick point on the archetype of what we do at the accelerator. As I mentioned, we are a support function. So we support internal teams as well as startups to go from idea to scale up. And here I'm showing sort of the model journey, how we do this. Again, it's not the only way to do it, but it just gives you an example of how you can take an idea to an actual product. But what I want to go next is to deep dive into some of these examples. So the first example is working in partnership. So this example is working with the German Space Agency. It was a collaboration that I would argue took about a year and a half to get off the ground. And the objective of the collaboration is, could we develop remote operated vehicles that can deliver food supplies in remote and dangerous areas. The vehicle that you see here is one that we actually currently use. It's typically manned by a driver, but in certain circumstances, we want to avoid driver harm. So we've partnered with the robotics team at the German Space Agency to use some of their technology in robotics to see if we can remote operate a vehicle that we already use. So working with partnerships is one way to look at digital transformation and to develop new projects and approaches. I will say that it does take some time, given the fact that we have two large organizations that are coming together to form a collaboration. So this particular project is a multi-year project, and it involves about 25 engineers and multiple divisions within the German Space Agency. And then on WFP side, we're working closely, obviously, with our Global Fleet Office and our South Sudan country office. Again, it always starts with a problem, which in this case is how might we deliver food in dangerous circumstances and avoid putting drivers at risk. The next example is what I call intrapreneurship. So essentially, how can we support internal teams that have ideas around digital products to test and pilot and eventually scale throughout the organization. Here, this example is called Optimus, which is a supply chain optimization tool that was developed by our team in HQ. And the idea here is to use data and analytics to optimize food basket design, transfer modality, and the sourcing and delivery plan, thereby reducing transaction costs and operational costs. This was piloted in Iraq, and there they observed 12% cost reductions. And they've also piloted in Cameroon, where they were able to save $1.8 million using this digital tool. The project at the moment is looking at expanding its user base. So the Optimus team in HQ is working on onboarding users across different regional bureaus so that the tool can be disseminated across various operational contexts within WFP. One of the challenges here is finding a path to scale once a tool goes from an innovation incubator, which is what we do at the accelerator, where we have dedicated innovation funds, to then becoming a corporate tool, in which case you need to find a corporate level of funding sources to support the continued development and maintenance, which is a big piece of costs of the tool itself. So one of the challenges with internal innovation and product development is, how do you ensure that you have that scaling pathway in mind? And more importantly, you're able to secure funding that can ensure that once the product goes from a pilot to a full-scale solution, that there are resources to continue the development and operations of the tool. The next example is an innovation that we sourced externally. So as I mentioned in my introduction, we work with country offices to identify needs in the field, and then we go out and try to see if we can identify startups or technology providers that are able to solve that problem. In this particular example, Roamby is a startup based in San Francisco. And the problem here is real-time monitoring of food shipments within the Ethiopia country office. So the question is, how might we be able to better track where the food supplies are going in real time so that we can better inform ourselves and our operations in terms of food movements across the country, both from the country office as well as the sub-offices within Ethiopia. And ROMBI had already developed an IoT, or Internet of Things, tracking system that they had used in other countries. And it seemed like their solution was a good fit to what our colleagues in Ethiopia were saying was the problem they were trying to solve. So in this example, we piloted the ROMBI IoT tracking system in Ethiopia over the span of a year. There were actually delays because of COVID and limited access to the country, but also importing communication devices, as we found out, is actually quite challenging. And we had to work with several ministries in Ethiopia to be able to get the import approvals for the tracking devices that were used on the trucks. After a few tests within the country office, I believe they tested 200 devices, they were able to come to an agreement with the country office such that they now have a direct contract with ROMBI. So the Ethiopia country office, as some of you may know, is one of our largest operations worldwide, and they now have a direct contract with ROMBI that is providing tracking equipment and software for the Ethiopia operations. So that's another way that we scale digital services, that is through a procurement or LTA, which is the next example, cloud to street. So here, this was another startup looking at flood modeling and prediction. It started off as a test in West Africa, and then over time, based on the traction that it was having, we were able to procure services from cloud to street globally through a long-term agreement, an LTA, which is obviously available to other UN agencies. The challenge here was, one, trying to monitor impact for a GIS service is a bit hard because you're looking at analytics and not necessarily at operations. The other challenge is an LTA itself can take a very long time, and it took about a year in this case to finalize and enter into that agreement. And when dealing with external partners, that can cause some friction. But that's another route to scale, which is entering into a service agreement with a technology provider that is solving a need. But we were able to test this in a limited case first to prove that there was value to be had before we entered into the very long journey of the LTA route. And the last but not least, this is one of our newest programs. This is working with the European Space Agency. And we're trying to see how we can use Earth observation and artificial intelligence startups specifically to look at different areas that our colleagues have identified as a need. A lot of the areas, as you might imagine, are looking at various aspects of climate change. So crop modeling, anticipatory action, mapping sandstorms, which was a use case that came out of our Madagascar country office. So in this program, the European Space Agency was interested to partner with us. They are providing the funding and the technical support, and we at the accelerator and through all our colleagues in the field, we're identifying the problem statements. So again, to what PG was saying in his introduction, it's really about finding these operational pain points that can be solved with technology. Technology itself is just a tool. And for us, it's important that we identify how we can have the most impact. This collaboration also took quite some time to take flight. As you can imagine, the European Space Agency is quite a large organization. So coming up with the MOU and the partnership agreement took some time. But we are at the stage of selecting the startups that are participating in this program. And over the next quarter, we will be testing the tools that these startups have to offer in partnership with colleagues in country offices across the world. I know that was really, really fast, and I didn't go into much detail, just given in the interest of time. I'm going to stop sharing here. I just wanted to give you a flavor of the different ways that we approach innovation and to showcase that it really is first about identifying the problem at hand, the operational pain point, and then where the solution comes from can be different places. It could be a startup, it could be internal teams that have great ideas and need the support to test and pilot. It could be a big organization like the German Space Agency or the European Space Agency that have a lot of technological might, but not necessarily the field understanding or the operational footprint that we might have at the World Food Program. So let me pause there. I'm going to look at the chat to see what questions have come up, and then we can continue the conversation. So Shelley from UNHCR, are there tips to get business engagement on setting business objectives related to data maturity when the business is unsure of the potential impacts of data maturity? Any advice on grounding data maturity and operational outcomes? Shelley, do you want to turn on your mic and expand a bit on your question?
Kyriakos, just to add, I think those were the questions that came up before.
Okay, sorry. Thanks, Katerina.
You are very welcome. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from this group. I think the opposite. You've just opened very nicely, clarifying that we do want to hear from anyone in this breakout to please feel free to ask Kyriakos any question or comment.
Or share your own experience from your own agency. I would love to hear that as well. And I'm sure others would be interested to learn from you and others.
There's one from Valerie now. Kyriakos, if you want, I can read it out.
Sure.
From Valerie, what modalities are used to contract? How do you deal with the procurement aspects to directly select a digital service provider, for instance, like Rombi? And right. Valerie, feel free to, of course, come on mic and turn on your video if you'd like.
Yes. I mean, it's really a question related, I think, to what a lot of people experience across the UN system. I'm with UNICEF. I'm with the Technology for Development team in EAPRO in the East Asia Pacific region, based in Cyprus. But
very cool. That's where I'm from.
I'm in Nicosia. So no, the reason why I'm asking is, so I used to be an innovation focal point before, and it was always a big problem to actually be able to work with private sector partners and to justify why you want to work with a particular tech startup or a tech company and not with another one from a procurement perspective, right? Because our procurement is still stuck in the 80s and we are trying to move forward, and it goes from not being able to pay with a credit card to lots of other things. So that's really what have you guys figured out that we still need to figure out in UNICEF to be able to do that kind of work?
Great.
So, do you work?
That's a great question, Valerie, and we've had the same struggle, so to speak, as well, given that a lot of our systems are quite similar, if not identical. Initially, or in the early days of the accelerator, we would have to use a sole source justification for some of the startups in order to procure their services directly. Considering we were doing pilots and these were not multi-million-dollar contracts, and considering that the startup was selected because they uniquely had a tool or a product or a service that they could offer, in most cases, those sole source justifications were approved. We have evolved since, and we now have a grant process whereby we give a grant to these startups. In that case, we still have to document that we openly competed and that any startup was eligible to apply, which is the case with us because we always issue an innovation challenge and any organization is eligible to apply. So we have to document very clearly that we went through a competitive process, and therefore the startups that are selected have been selected based on merit, and they will be awarded a grant of whatever amount is decided. Most of our grants, or as we call it in the innovation space, equity-free funding, is 100K more or less, and that's our starting point for a lot of these sprints with startups. I'm seeing hands up and then questions. Let's take the hands first, and then I'll go to the chat. Saliha, I don't know if you came before Daniel, but please unmute yourself and share your question with the group.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much. Really interesting. I work for the Adaptation Fund on innovation, among other things. And what I'm interested in is looking, for example, at examples of the R&D collaborations or the joint innovation program. Is how do you actually establish those? What is the sort of impetus that leads to those? Is it, for example, you know, the WFP decides, okay, we have a mission, you know, an innovation mission. So do you take the mission-oriented approach, or is it more like, I don't remember, was the R&D collaboration, was it's like a German space agency or something?
Yeah.
That was part of that, right? Or is it they have the technology, they approach you? I mean, is it, how does it work generally?
It's a bit of both, Saliha, to be honest. And I'll be the first to admit that these partnerships, and I've been involved in both, took a lot of time and a lot of effort. And just like with any other partnership, there's this concept of shared value, right? So the German Space Agency, obviously they're a space agency, and they do have a humanitarian tech program. So we work with that group, and there's this constant conversation around them saying, well, we have all this amazing tech. What problems do you have in the field that we can solve with these technologies? And therefore, we come with the problems, they come with the potential solutions, and there's this constant courting, and then eventually we'll hit the sweet spot. With the German Space Agency in particular, given that we're located in Munich and they're right outside of Munich, we've had a long-standing MOU with them over the last 6 years since our genesis. And so at the very beginning, a lot of the collaboration was very small scale. And then over time, as we've gotten to know each other's capacities and capabilities, the joint projects have been larger and larger. But it does take a lot of time. And ultimately, it comes down to, is what they are providing a good match for the problems that we are surfacing from the field, right? Because if it's not, then there's no point. Even if it's a cool tech, it doesn't make any sense. And it was the same with the European Space Agency. They have a mandate from the EU member states to share the outcomes of the research and the funding that they receive from the EU. And in conversations, we said, well, there's a lot of potential applications of Earth observation and GIS in what we do. There's a potential match. So we approached a few country offices just to assess if there was any needs, and indeed there were quite a few. But that collaboration also took about a year from beginning until we were able to kick it off. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Daniel, over to you, sir.
No, thank you so much, Caracos, and thanks for all these these 4 business cases. I was wondering, how can we learn about more business cases and find opportunities to exchange? Like, we have some innovation projects in PAHO and I would like to share with WP, and at the same time, we are very interested to learn about other innovation solutions that you have, and see how can we collaborate. So I'm interested in learning what would be your advice to, you know, to find the different, to learn more about the different innovation projects that you're having in your portfolio.
Sure. So one good way is on our website, we have our annual report, and you can look at all the projects we have there, and I'll type the website here as well. But then also feel free to reach out to me directly. In fact, we are working with WHO on some pandemic-related, potential pandemic-related innovation programs. And we also, as I mentioned, or I don't remember if it was on this call, sorry, but we're doing some health-related work with GIZ as well. So I can also connect you with the team that's a bit more health-focused, and they can share with you their experiences so far. I'm sharing my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, sorry I couldn't get to all the questions. I saw they're gonna yank us back into the main plenary. But please reach out. I'm happy always to share. Innovation is a labor of love. It is, you know,
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Good to see you again. I hope you had good discussions in your breakout. I'd like to invite our 3 breakout group presenters to come back on video and maybe just in 1 minute or so share the most interesting outcome of your discussion. Kyriakos, you're the unfortunate one. You're the only one I see so far. Do you want to kick us off? What was the hot topic in the Taking Innovations or Pathways to Innovation group?
I think one of the key themes was how do you go from an idea or pilot and then to the testing part using the existing framework that we all have to operate within as UN agencies. So whether that relates to procurement or scale up or arranging for MOUs or partnership agreements. So how do you actually take this all and make it into practice? And I was sharing that it is a labor of love. It takes a lot of perseverance, but you can definitely do it.
I was going to say, you hit on all the biggest pain points there. I'm sure you had some great advice to share from the Innovation Accelerators scaling program. So thanks for that. Alessandra, you came up next. What was discussed in your group? What was the main takeaway?
Well, I think the major takeaway is that technology is a commodity and change management is the key. And when we say that, we recognize the importance. Honestly, when we say systems are a commodity, everybody, given some time and some budget, good developers are everywhere out there today, can actually develop a system. Now, the tough thing is to have happy customers using a system. And therefore, the change management should be really the #1 focus in terms of user experience, in terms of customer satisfaction, in terms of continuous improvement, in terms of recognition of mistakes and trying to recover, and having skills of people to roll out and to support rollout of new digital services. That's, I think, the key to good partnerships to shape together one digital UN way. Over.
Thank you, Alessandra. That's a fantastic outcome of the discussion. I secretly wish I had joined your group and not sat here in plenary helping lost souls. So thanks for that. Diana, back to you. Data strategy. What were you guys discussing in your breakout group? What was your highlight?
Thanks. We discussed one of the pillars of our data program, which was integration. And we were discussing how we went from very little integration to more a governed approach to integration. But the key to success was simplification and to make sure that it was communicated to our community, developing a community and communicated, but also that our approach wasn't top down, but it really was agile. And that's one of the key takeaways from our lessons learned, is that agile is key to making sure that we have change management, we have the buy-in from the end users, and that we can adopt whatever is proposed. So thank you very much.
Great lesson learned there. I think what I'm hearing from all of you is that it's often not so much about the technology. That is not the hard part, but it's, it's people, it's processes, it's culture, it's getting all of that right. And then digitalization can be very successful. So with that, I'm going to say a big thank you to all of you. I'd also like to bring in Anush, who helped an incredible amount making this webinar happen. So thank you also to you, Anush. Thanks to our presenters for sharing, for doing the work at your organization at WFP in the first place, and for coming out here and sharing it with this broader community. Really, really appreciate it. To everyone who's still on the call, and I see still a lot of people, we're going to try share all the recordings from the sessions and all the slides. They will end up in your inbox. Just give us a little bit of time for processing. And if you have any outstanding questions, we'll take them on the UN team space and include a link to that